And off we go. So welcome everyone. My name is Anita Thompson. I am thrilled to be here with you this evening, especially nice and warm inside. We are going to be doing a winter trees watercolor painting. Again, just take another look in the supply list as far as what's in the chat. I'm going to just recopy it real quickly. And I made a suggestion about having a trash bag available, or at least, sort of near you. And also, if you have a dry brush to help dislodge the salt from when it's on the watercolor paper, basically what we're going to do is we throw salt on it for one of the last things that we do, the last steps.
We're here that the key.
And basically, it then has to sort of be wiped off after it's dry. So the brush helps do that. If you don't have a brush available, and again, it has to be kind of a dry brush. I use this kind of big kids one because it's nice and big and I can kind of get in there. But if you don't have a brush, you can use a Q-tip, or you can also use sort of like a piece of a paper towel to dislodge it, or a tissue. And last but not least, you can use your fingers, which are always towards the end the best option, using your nails to kind of take off the stuck on salt. Okay, so let's get started. What we're going to do first is we're going to draw out this scene. And I'll just give you a quick rundown of what we're going to do. We're going to draw out this scene. And then what we're going to do is we're mainly using the blue watercolor. You are welcome to add purple. I've had a few people that have added purple and blue to make it a little bit darker. So you're welcome to do that. But we're going to draw it out first. Then we're going to do the trees inside the trees. Then we're going to outline the trees. And then our final step, or almost final step, is then going to be the background. Let me just let Elaine in. So we're going to get started here. And I'm just going to recopy the supplies in the chat again. Welcome, Elaine. We are recording, so if you have any questions, you can either unmute or put it in the chat. I'm always checking the chat to make sure to keep up with any questions. All right, so I'm going to move my piece up here, and I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit with my camera. Move my brushes, and we're going to start off using our pencil here. Let me move that from me. Okay, so let me move this up a little bit. Again, if you can't see anything or you need me to zoom in, just let me know. But we're going to start off first with our crescent moon in the upper left corner of the page here. So here we are over here, and we're going to start off and make that crescent moon. So you can do this lightly. I'm going to be doing it a bit darker so you can see it on Zoom. You want to do it just enough so that you can see it. The other thing is, if you would like to add some stars to your sky, please feel free to do so. Okay, so we're going to make our crescent moon here. I'm going to go in just a little bit closer. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of show it to you again real quickly. So we make our crescent moon here in the upper left corner, and then we're going to make the 3 trees. So let's get started doing that. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to actually start off with the branches so that we are able to make sure we fit everything in. So we're going to start off here at the top of the paper. And so our first branch at the top, sort of like this. And it's going to also make a V with where our actual tree is. And what I like to do is very lightly draw in the entire tree at this point. So just going straight down, we will, erase where we need to when we draw in the branches. But if you make the tree straight down, it's a little bit easier to attach some of the other branches. So once we have that tree drawn, we can attach that first branch right here and then erase the spot where it connects. So see what I did there? So thickness of the tree. Yeah, I would say about an inch, Jesse. Yeah, absolutely. That is a good estimate. I'm going to go a little bit closer here. I'm going to see if I can kind of, you know what? I'm going to do it this way so that you are still able to pretty much see the original here for the most part. Okay, so next we're going to continue now with the branches. So there are 2 more branches on this side. And so we're going to go down here a little bit. We want to make sure that that next branch is pointy on the end and that it sort of reaches out towards our crescent moon. And we attach it to our tree. I think I'm going to extend this a little more. So again, it doesn't have to look exactly like mine. You can add more branches if you want. And then the third one is also going to be going, or I should say pointing towards the crescent moon as well. And again, we want to attach it to our tree there and then erase where we attached it. And that's the first side. It's a very basic drawing. We do a lot with the salt. That's really kind of the star of the show, the salt, and a bit of the outlining. So we're now going to go on the other side of the tree here. And we have another branch still with this tree. And that's going to start about right here. So you want to make sure that this branch is higher than this one. So we're going to extend it up. And we're going to go all the way up to the top of our paper. And it's going to split a little bit there, like so. And then get a little thicker. We bring that down back to the tree. And then erase the line. And we are about to go into the next tree. And that next tree, again, we start off with the branch so that we know how far apart to go. And so we have a little bit of the branch peeking out right here. And we're probably going to make that pretty long. I'm going to make it just a little bit thinner here. And then we basically want the next part to go upward. The basic tree to start up at the top and be sort of straight down. And so as you can see, I'm starting to try to judge about how large I want this branch or how far I want it from where it attaches. And then go down. You can have some lumps in the tree. It doesn't have to kind of go straight down. Hi, Deborah. I got you back on. We're still doing the second tree. And we come around the other side. Make another smaller branch. And again, just go straight down. As you can see, I want to make it tree-like, so I'm kind of making some bumps along the way. So feel free to do the same. Okay, and we have our last one coming up. So here again, we're going to start off with our branch. Let me move this a little closer. We're going to start off with our branch, and that is going to go right up towards this smaller branch next to us. And here again, that branch connects to the straightness of the tree here. You want to make sure as you're going into the second half of the tree that it lines up with pretty much the top part of the tree. Go straight down. And then we have some other branches happening right here at the top. It kind of goes off of our paper. And straight down. And then we have one more branch down here that trails off to the right side of our paper. And then straighten up any of your lines. And what I mean by that is, like I get a little sketchy with my lines, so I'm just making sure that they are single lines and not so sketchy. Erase any extra lines. Because our next step is going to be painting inside the trees. So we are pretty much finished with our pencil at this point. Oops, I grabbed a pencil with no eraser. That's not good. Okay. So this is where we are going to start using the our paintbrush as sort of a pencil in the sense of we're going to be going inside of our trees and making on the right hand side we're going to be making shadows, right? So a shadow straight down the right side of each tree. You can see that. Okay. And then on the inside of each branch. And then finally, we're going to make kind of like, the cut marks in the birch trees. So we're going to start off with our blue. And that's pretty much what we use. We use blue. Again, if you want to use some blue and purple, you'll get like a royal blue color. You can also use purple instead of blue, whatever you want. So I like to use the inside of the plastic part of my watercolor dish or my watercolor set in order to mix my blue. So by mixing my blue, what I mean by that is, you can get a lighter color by doing that, right? So I'm going to add some water to my palette, and then I'm going to add blue to that water so that I get a nice watery blue. And that's going to serve as our shadowing, basically. So we're going to start off first, and I'm going to go in closer now that we are pretty much finished with the drawing part. Okay. And so I have some of this blue on the tip of my brush. And we're going to start first with the moon. And I'm just going to add some of that blue on the right side inside the crescent moon right there. So for some shading. Let me see if I can give you guys some more light. And then when you're ready, you're going to basically use that same blue, that kind of watery, watered down blue, for the shading on the top parts of each of the branches here, because the shadowing would be happening kind of on this side because the branch above it would be making a shadow. Okay, you're also going to go, remember, down, straight, inside the tree. We're doing the insides of the trees first. See how I'm kind of pushing that water? And if I want to make it a little darker, I add a little more blue. We're going to have a chance also to go back in and make it a little bit more of a gradient, just adding some more water. I'm going to add some more watercolor here. So again, you're just going to relax and paint the insides of each of the branches. I feel like this is an incredibly relaxed one because it's very simple, but it has a really neat effect with the salt. So here again, I'm on the next tree and I'm just going down the right side, inside the tree, and adding the shading. And keep going here on the final tree. And don't rush. I will make sure that you have plenty of time. If you're still on the other trees, it's okay. Okay, so I'm also going to go on the inside branches here. And then on the last one. And so basically your trees should look like this, something like this right now. And then we're going to add a little bit more of some light shading just by adding some water to that blue. And the blues that we created on the right side, we're going to add some water to the left side of it so that it lightens it up a little bit, going towards the middle of the tree. You don't want to go towards the middle of the tree, but basically what you're doing is you're adding a lighter color by adding water and pushing that color, the blue, just a little bit next to the blue that you did so that you get a lighter blue. So I'm just going to show this up close to show you what I mean. See, like right here, you can see that there's a line that I created originally, and then I took water and I pulled some of that color to go next to it so that it would look like a little bit more of, oops, that's a piece of my hair, sorry. You don't want that there. Here's some water where I pulled some of the color in next to it so it looks like it's shaded. Ah, I'll show you. Good question, Jesse. So if you look at this one right here, I'm going to go up really close. So I just dipped the tip of my brush in water, and I'm going to lightly go over the line of where I can sort of blend between the paper and where we created the line work. And then I'm going to act like almost like I'm shading, right? Using the water almost like a blender. See, here I do it again, because you can lift up the watercolor by using water. Awesome. Yay. Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's really important. And so you're going to do that for all of these. You're just going to, add some water and just blend it out a little bit. Feel free to add a little more blue wherever you want, but you just want to soften up all of those lines so that it's a shadow, but the darkest part is against the edge of each side. So see, I'm going to do it here. Blend it. And it can go, it can go towards the middle of your tree if you want. And again, I just use the tip of my brush and put that much water on, and then I go over the color until it softens and starts to, spread out on the paper. So I'm going to do that for each section that we did, the darker line, right? So you just want to pull some of that shading a little bit into the tree. And then after this, we're going to make those sort of cut lines. That's our next step. Okay, so I'm going in each section here and wetting very slightly with the tip of my brush the edge of the blue and just pulling it a little bit into the right side of that color so that it's blended now. So it's a little bit of a softer blue next to it. Can you see how it now looks, just like that, it looks pretty good, but we're going to make it look even better. I'm also going to soften up the crescent moon too. Oop, sorry, I went a little too close to the camera and it went a little fuzzy. So I'm going to do the same with the crescent moon. And if you want to go back and, make some darker blue areas, feel free to do that. But our next step is going to be adding those kind of cut marks. I like to add a little bit of some darker blue right in the points of the crescent moon. You don't have to, but okay. And aren't, oh wow, John Paul, that looks awesome. Oh, very, very nice. Almost as, oh wait, let me ask you to unmute because I think you're talking. There you go. I just asked you to,
The
yep,
moon.
beautiful.
Well, I just put the lines over here at the moon.
I love it.
Get a little
Very,
closer.
yep. Oh, I love it.
Here you smear these lines for the blue lines for the moon.
Yes. So I'm going to show it up close here.
Ooh, okay.
So what I did was I took a little bit of that water,
Okay.
see, and I kind of blended it. Now that's my original. Here's the one that I'm working on now. I added a little bit more of some blue in the kind of the tips. And now our next step is going to be making these lines on the trees. So you see, going down the left side, we make lines, curved lines, and then on the right side, we make them not directly across, but it's like staggered. So let's do that. So we're going to start here. And again, we're using, using the light blue, but you can make it just a little bit darker. You know what? Let me adjust my light for a second because that is bouncing off, giving you guys a reflection on the plastic part and you can't see. There we go. Okay, so I'm mixing up my blue over here again. And I'm gonna real quickly, I'm gonna go like this. I'm also gonna do it in the small ones too, the small branches. Yep, these are the same color. Yep, that was a very good question. Yep, these are the same color basically. Um, Here I'm going to add some on the branches. And again, this is just kind of a quick, and then remember on the main, on the main tree, you want to add them on the right side, but in between the ones you already made, right? So I'm going down. Gonna add a little more light blue here, going into next one. And we curve our lines because we want this to look realistic, like it has volume, right? A tree goes around. Like if we were to take our finger or our hand and touch the tree all the way around, right? It has volume. And so we want to make sure that it reads that way when we're painting it. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so and again, I'm going across the other way on the right side of this tree. Okay, working our way down each of the trees. Again, this is still the light blue. You know, I made it a little bit darker, um, but not by much. Then remember to get each part of the smaller branches. And already that looks pretty good, right? So our next step, we are now going to trace all the trees, all the branches, and the crescent moon. And so we're now going to be taking our brush and we want to make sure that we make it kind of dark lines, right? And what I like to do so that I don't smudge the trees, I like to start off and trace them, but then I flip my paper so that I don't get my thumb, or I'm sorry, my pinky, and smudge the blue. So I'll show you what I mean. So here I'm going to trace, right? Use my brush as a pencil. And the way I do that is I make sure that I load up the point of the brush with lots of paint. And again, this is blue. Now, if you want to do purple, you could do that. But we are starting to prepare for the last part, the almost last part of this painting. So again, we are tracing all of the trees, and this might take you a little bit, so you just want to take your time. Now, it doesn't matter if you get too thick because we're going to be filling in all around the trees with the blue, remember. But this is going to give a nice outline to your trees, and it's also going to help you paint around the trees. So like I said, I start off at the top and I trace as much as I can without my hand getting in the way of kind of blurring the blue that I've just painted. And then I turn around, I kind of turn my paper upside down in order to finish the rest. But you don't have to do it that way if you're much better than me at not messing up the inside of the trees. I'm going to do up here first. Now we're all concentrating so hard. But I feel like it's relaxing because it's almost like coloring. You don't really have to think too much. You're just tracing. Great thing I love about this project is everybody's looks so different, especially because we all use different amounts of salt. So the more salt you use that's concentrated in a section, the more of sort of a snowflake effect that you get. It's pretty neat. And you can go back even later on and make parts a little darker by going back in and painting, which is what I did, but we will probably not have time to do that. Um, but you can absolutely do it if you want it to be, if you want sections in the background to be a little darker. I'm gonna flip my paper a bit so that I can get the rest here. It's also helpful to start from left to right or right to left, going in one direction. Um, maybe doing the bottom or the top first and then flipping your paper. I forgot to do that this time, so I'm kind of working a little backwards, filling in where I kind of missed those lines, but it's just on the one tree. Got a little ahead of myself on the other tree, so then I remembered why I don't do that because it's a little harder to not smudge it. It is, Jesse. I agree. It is meditative, right? It's like um, if you've ever done the coloring books when they were really in, it's like you don't have to really think about it. You're just coloring. I mean, you got to think a little bit, but that's the one thing I like about this project. I'm so thankful that Lisa picked this one. Just wait till you add the salt. It's really cool. Oh, thanks, Jesse. I hope this helps anybody that had a rough day or, just happy to be home. Kind of a nice thing to do before bed and settling in for the night, if that's what you're doing. I know I am. I have my warm socks on right now. So everybody's trees and crescent moon should look a bit like this, all outlined. Um, feel free to make any sections darker on the inside if you want, but we're going to start the messy part after this. Hmm, a good question, Jesse. So, if you were going to add stars, what you could do is I would draw them in. And so, maybe we put star here. And you can either do actual stars, right? You can make it kind of look like that. The other thing you could do is you could make little tiny dots, but it might look like snow. So you could do that, but then you'd have to kind of paint over or paint around all of that. Might be a little easier to paint around stars. Then the other option would be you could just go ahead and paint the background blue. We add the salt, let everything dry, take it off, and you get, this effect. And then you can go back, and if you have some white paint or you have like a white paint pen, something like that, then you could actually add the stars on top of that. So there's two options. That's how I would do the stars. When two of the people did it, thank you, before, they added, I think one of them actually drew the stars and went around each one. So just like we did here for the branches, we outlined everything. So it took her a while for sure. And I think she worked on it after the class had ended and then sent it to me. The other one, she did the whole background, like I just mentioned. And then later on, when it was dry, she added in the white paint and then again sent it to me. So whatever you're feeling. It would be kind of really cool. I just thought of this. I think they have glow in the dark um, stars, like stickers. That would look kind of neat to add those on afterward. I think I've seen those on Amazon. That might be kind of neat. Okay, so are we ready to get messy for this second to the final part? Because the final part is brushing off all of the salt. So we're going to be adding color and salt at the same time. So the other thing I like to do is I like to put my salt in like a little cup or a little bag. Of course, if you have like the shaker salt, which I do have salt in a shaker, you could just, shake it on as well. But you want to go in each of the sections. The reason being that this watercolor paper dries pretty fast, and you want to make sure to get a lot of salt in each section. So you want to make sure that your table is covered. If you have, as I mentioned, one of the suggestions I made was, to either get a piece of newspaper underneath or a bigger piece of paper underneath. If you didn't do that at the start and you have those things, you might want to do that now before we get started shaking the salt. And then another thing, having a trash bag or something that you can, shake your art over, and then also sweep off the salt once it dries and sticks to the paper. So I'll give everyone a minute for that, and then we're going to get started. And this part, we're going to be using a lot of the blue and using it sort of darkly or heavily. This is where you might also want to add in purple. I would suggest mixing it first, on your plastic palette here.
What do you think, Anita?
Oh my gosh, it looks awesome.
Take a closer look.
Yeah, I love the detail. That looks great, John Paul.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we're gonna get messy. So, gonna dip my brush in water. And, just like we did before, we're going to make water, watery watercolor on the side here. In order for the salt to stick, you need to add quite a bit of water to your surface. So I like to sort of start off by adding some water here in my plastic palette too. And then I'm going to add some blue. And then you can always make it darker on the paper. Okay, so here is where if you want to add in some purple, you can. If you want to add in, different colors, you can do that too. But we're going to start off at the top. And so basically, you should have a little bit of some pooling water. So I'm going to go close now and add a little more light to this. So we're going to start off at the top and we're going to go in each section. So here's the first section, and you can see my water is all, pooled up on the paper, and that's exactly what I want. And then I'm going to throw some salt on it. And I'm going to do that for each section. And so you want to decide how dark you want your sections. Again, this is where it's going to get messy. You're going to have salt in your watercolor paint. But if we go section to section, it will dry. You can even, push around some of the salt that has fallen, in the section you're doing. See, I'm even going to add some water to paper because I want to make sure it's nice and wet. And then I'm going to add more blue. The other thing is this creates a differing, various, let me see, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, basically, when you do it this way too, there are some darker areas just naturally. And that's kind of fun. So see, here I am pouring salt on. And this is why, you have something underneath. So the more salt you put on in a section, you can see that the salt kind of sucks up the water and the paint. And it's going to make it very, kind of very sparkly. I then go in to my water cup a lot and rinse off my brush in between each section. So it should be watery for sure, but you want to make sure that there is color on there. So if you want, you can keep adding, like I'm over here adding some more blue in the paint. You're basically, the water should be not quite soaking in completely on the paper, if that makes sense. See, I want to be able to, I can see that the salt is on top and it's kind of in a pool of it. I'm sorry, I don't have like an exact ratio, but I would say definitely enough water to put down so that, like, see in this section, like I can push the water on top of the paper. And then I rinse my brush a little, and now I'm going to add a little more blue. So Jan, the salt, basically what the salt does, it's going to dry to your paper and it's going to create, after we wipe it off, it's going to create a texture like this. Because what the salt does is, as it starts to melt, it kind of sucks up the color and the water at the same time and kind of leaves these little, see that? Sort of like these little designs. So that's after I've removed the salt from the original. Yeah, you're welcome. It's really neat. This is really neat to do with kids too. Um, they love this, especially, throwing salt on something, but they do have to be supervised for sure. So I'm going to do this whole section here and see. I grab my water. I keep dipping my brush so that it's almost like I'm making a little bit of a river, right? And then I'm adding more blue. And you can always kind of dot on more water by dipping your brush in your water, the tip of it. I like to I like to kind of use the tip of it for judging, how much water to put on, because I can always kind of dot it on with the tip. All right. And you can see it working, right? You can see the salt here kind of melting or kind of soaking up. And you can even like push it along using your brush, but then make sure to rinse your brush in your water. And keep going in each section. So again, I like to add a bit of water first. And then add the blue. The other thing you can do, um, after this is done, everything's dried, you have the salt removed. You can always go back and make parts a little darker by just going back in and adding some paint. You don't have to do a ton of salt if you don't want to. If you want just a few sprinkles in each section, that's okay too. All right, so section by section. Okay, more salt. It takes a little time, to do each section. And if you want to do like two sections at a time, you can do that. I'm kind of doing this top part here. Let me lift up my camera one more time. Give you a little bit more of a larger view of what I'm doing. Okay, throw on some salt. So in the meantime, the salt over here in the beginning is pretty much starting to dry. And what's nice is that we already, went ahead and outlined all around our trees and everything so that we don't have to worry about so much going over our lines. You just have to be kind of careful when you're painting next to them. And starting to do the bottom sections now. I also like to leave a little bit of the white of the paper because it makes it look snowy, like a snowy sky. So between the mix of salt and, you know, adding the blue, but also you see what I'm doing? I'm kind of moving my water around in a circular fashion, kind of quickly to cover the space. And I end up leaving some spots the white of the paper. And it just adds to the effect. The other neat thing is if you use different kinds of salt, it has a different effect, like kosher salt, right? Or sea salt, bigger chunks. That's what I'm sort of using. They're going to make different patterns than, say, very fine table salt. It's really neat to kind of experiment. So Lisa, this is going to be like finding sand in your in your bathing suit, except you're going to be finding it under your nails. Sorry about that. All right, final section here. Okay, and then final sprinkling of salt in this section. We're gonna let this dry a little bit. In the meantime, if you're finished, you can rinse out your cup and your brush as we let this dry for probably about maybe 3 to 4 minutes. And then we're going to start the removal of all of this stuff. I'm just going to rinse my cup out. You can also wipe off your watercolor palette, take some of the salt, clean some of the salt out of the blue and anywhere else you got it while you're waiting for this to dry. And so with this section now, you can either start to dry a little bit um, of your salt that's on your paper, but mostly the sections that are drier are the original ones you started with. So this is where you're going to take your art and you're going to shake it first into the trash. So I'm going to kind of bring my trash bag up here. And so again, I'm going to move this back so you can see my trash bag. Welcome to my trash bag. I'm going to very carefully take my art filled with salt. So I have a trash bag that I had in here from today. So I'm kind of cleaning stuff out. And so I'm using this to kind of dump. And then what I'm going to do, I'm also going to make sure to kind of dump the bottom part of the paper that was underneath. And I may have to do that twice. If it's wet, you can use a bit of paper towel to wipe off that area. But I'm now going to take my dry brush and I'm going to start pushing off the salt into the trash. I want to make sure, so some of it might be still a little wet, but that's okay. You can still push it off. It'll still make, some of the parts will still be, um, creating the shapes that we want. You want to be careful with not brushing on top of the trees because you just want to stay in the sections where you added the salt. Because if not, you'll sort of move all of the wet parts onto your trees and kind of ruin your trees. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking my brush, and again, I'm using a circular motion to kind of get up some of the stuck salt. It's also drying it at the same time. So you're also going to get a bit of a texture from it. And you can kind of tap out your brush as you're collecting some of the wetness. Just do your best you can with the brush, because then you'll have to go back and probably remove some more with your hands and fingers and or a tissue or paper towel. But see, here's my one section already without most of the salt. So I'm going to do the other sections here, and I'm rotating my art into the trash. Well, it's pretty messy. but it looks really good when you're done. You hear all that salt. I'm trying not to fling it on my rug. Trying to keep in the in the trash. We shall see. That is the true experiment. So some of it is, really dried on there. So again, take off as much as you can using the brush, but you may have to get in there, or you will have to most definitely get in there with your fingers. They'll be a little bit blue for a night. Sometimes you have to suffer for your art, right? All right, so I removed, and you can, wait for it to dry a little more if you want to wait to remove the salt, but it's usually pretty stuck on there. And so I'm gonna now move back my, so I'm gonna go in really close so you can see there's still kind of a lot of salt on there. So I'm gonna take a little piece of paper towel. Now I'm just gonna smooth it all off. So I have sort of a lip of my tray here. So I'm going to smooth it off down there, but I also have, this paper that's underneath to kind of protect from the salt going everywhere. I'm just going to do each section one more time. And basically, you can kind of smooth your hands or fingers across the surface, and you can feel if there's lingering salt. And sometimes you just kind of have to get in there with your nail. You also want to make sure that when after you lift this up, you probably have salt on the back of your paper. So you just want to be cognizant of that so that, when you're cleaning up your spot, you make sure to also dust off the back of your watercolor paper. All right, I'm almost done here. I'll give it one more minute, and I can't wait to see if you're able to lift yours. Can't wait to see everybody's. You can hear the crunchiness. You can hear it coming off of the paper.
What do you think?
Oh, wow. John Paul, that looks amazing. I love your blue. Did you add purple or is that just a darker blue?
Blue and purple.
Yeah, that looks amazing. I love that. All right, so pretty much you can see all the patterns, starting to happen. And this is where if you wanted, you could go back and you could add some more dark blue
Good job.
in
What do you
sections.
think?
Fine.
Amazing.
Look at that
So
moon.
Yeah. Good job.
Oh, you saw it right here.
I see it.
it's fun, right?
It looks good.
Yes, it is. I'm
So
finished.
beautiful. So I'm curious what everyone else's looks like. I'm going to
I'll show
stop
her
the
again.
recording.
Okay.
And if you're interested, you can share. Let's see, where am I? Where is the record button? Stop recording.